enemy planes. The odds are bad this morning, nearly 3-1. Routine morning patrol goes on. They close the range. 3,500 feet. 3,000. 2,500. 2,000. But it's 3 Nazis spinning down in blood and flame to every one of ours. Routine morning patrol. They're good planes, wonderful planes, and their pilots are good too.
Yesterday I fulfilled one of my ambitions as a combat pilot. I got 1 airplane.
2 Focke-Wulfs came on my right. I turned right and put up a stone wall of bullets.
During World War II, the Army Air Corps was racially segregated, as were most other branches of the armed forces, and would remain so until 1947. A little-known chapter in the history of the Army Air Corps in World War II was the contribution of the 332nd Fighter Squadron, an all-black company of the 15th Air Force, made up of 450 black pilots of the 99th, 100th, 301st, and 302nd Fighter Squadrons. The years prior to World War II saw very few black aviators. In fact, the number was almost non-existent. Between 1932 and 1941, only 9 black aviators had received their commercial pilot ratings. The Civilian Pilot Training Act program and Public Law 18, initiated in 1939, sponsored pilot training without racial bias, and the first black flying cadets began their primary training at Tuskegee Institute in 1941. Among the first was their Captain Benjamin Davis, Jr., a 1936 graduate of West Point. Later joining him was pilot Lee Archer.
I'm a city boy. I was born and raised in New York City, and psychologically I was not suited to be a lifetime ghetto kid. Chance to go in the Air Force, learn training, discipline, get the idea of what great leadership was about, and which I received from General Davis, Colonel Davis in those days.
My father took me for a ride in a military airplane back in 1925. He paid $5 to a barnstorming pilot to give me a ride. I was interested in aviation as a child. The transatlantic flights, Lindbergh's flight, the flights to Antarctica, over the North Pole, all these dominated my interest in a career in military aviation. I thought it was the only career.
As student pilots, the Red Tails trained in an airstrip built near Tuskegee Institute by the United States government prior to World War II. Heading up the training program was Chief Pilot Instructor Alfred Anderson.
I started the program at Tuskegee Institute, and Tuskegee Institute is the mother of black aviation. They started their own flying school there in 1940. We trained young men there. And
while they were in school?
While they were in school, yeah.
Okay.
And while they were in school, and some came from other schools to take what was known then as the Civilian Pilot Training Program.
At the time, a young college student, I was very worried about what was happening to the Jews in Germany, but I realized that there, but for the grace of God, would be the black man in another circumstance. And so I wanted to do that. I loved the country and was patriotic enough to want to fight for it and do something for it.
There was the belief that was extant at the time that black pilots couldn't learn to fly airplanes. And I think that if it was recognized that they could fly airplanes, it was not believed that they could provide the leadership to fly airplanes in combat in a military organization. So there was a lack of confidence in their ability. This was a real factor in the creation and the development of the 332nd Fighter Group.
I also believed very basically that you can't ask for things from the country, you can't ask for rights and privileges that I thought I was entitled to and all unless you were willing to fight for it.
We went first to North Africa. We operated over Sicily. We covered the landings at Salerno. We covered the landings at the Anzio beachhead. And then we moved over to the eastern Adriatic coast of Italy and escorted bombers to Yugoslavia, to Ploesti, Romania, to southern France, the invasion of which we covered in August 1944.
Many times in the combat area that the bomber group, which were all white, would almost demand the Red Tail 51s, our group, be escort. We never lost a bomber, an American bomber, to enemy fighters. We didn't run off trying to get victories for self-aggrandizers, mainly because we knew it was not tolerated by our command system. And we played everything a little tighter and a little more fairly along the line.
These courageous men destroyed 409 enemy aircraft, flew over 15,000 sorties, and completed 1,578 missions. On March 23, 1945, the 332nd Red Tails received the Presidential Unit Citation for displaying outstanding courage, aggressiveness, and combat technique. Despite all this, the Red Tails were still subjected to adverse publicity, controversy, and discrimination.
I had a lot of pride in the people who were members of this group, who operated under so difficult an environment and persevered and developed the professionalism that enabled them to be successful under such difficult conditions. They could have hidden under the blanket of malcontent. They had lots of excuse for not performing. Instead, they did perform and were successful, and everybody in the end recognized that they were.
Members of the old 332nd are now professionals, many in business for themselves, some in politics, others retired. Though time and distance separate them, the men of the 332nd, the Red Tails, share a bond that transcends race, that transcends war.
All of us had to really in order to get the wings which we finally earned and which we are today so very proud of.
We'll be right back with our PM Magazine departments.